10-year-old Liam had always been full of energy and curiosity, especially when he was with his golden retriever, Max. That afternoon at Greystone Lake, everything looked peaceful. The sun hung low, casting long shadows across the frozen surface, and the air was quiet except for the crunch of their boots and paws in the snow. The lake looked like a giant mirror, perfectly still and inviting. Despite several warning signs that read danger, thin ice, Liam inched closer to the center, testing each step with childlike confidence. Max, ever loyal but clearly uneasy, barked from the shore and paced anxiously. His instincts told him something was wrong. He scratched at the snow and whimpered, trying to call Liam back. Then, without warning, a deep crack tore through the silence. Liam let out a single cry as the ice gave way beneath him. In a split second, he vanished into the freezing, dark water, leaving only jagged edges and silence behind. The moment Liam plunged into the icy water, it felt like his entire body was being pierced by thousands of needles. The shock of the cold stole his breath, and he gasped involuntarily, swallowing a mouthful of freezing lake water. Panic set in instantly. His arms flailed, trying to keep his head above the surface, but the weight of his soaked winter clothes dragged him down. The ice around the edges was slick and sharp, impossible to grip. In mere seconds, the broken sheet shifted, and the hole began closing, trapping him underneath. Above, the world was still, except for Max. The loyal golden retriever exploded into action, barking with desperate intensity. He paced back and forth, ears pinned, eyes fixed on the shattered spot in the ice. His barks echoed across the lake, but no help was in sight. Max pawed at the ice, growling, crying, doing everything he could to mark the place where his best friend had vanished. He didn't need to understand what had happened, he just knew Liam was down there, and he wasn't going to leave. Max didn't hesitate. The moment Liam disappeared beneath the surface, instinct kicked in. With a desperate bark, he dashed onto the treacherous ice, ignoring the cracks forming beneath his paws. He moved low, carefully but urgently, his nails skidding across the slick surface. Reaching the spot where the ice had shattered, Max began sniffing frantically, his whines turning sharp and frantic. The scent of his boy lingered in the air, mixed with the cold sting of lake water. Then, in a move that no one could have predicted, Max dropped to his belly, spreading his weight to avoid breaking through. Inch by inch, he crawled forward until he reached the jagged hole. There, he began pawing at the edges with determination, not out of panic, but with purpose. His body acted as a marker, refusing to budge from the last place Liam was seen. Max barked over and over again, his voice echoing across the empty lake like a signal flare. He wasn't moving, not until someone came, not until Liam was safe. On the far side of Greystone Lake, Rachel, an off-duty firefighter heading home after a long shift, was walking briskly, her breath forming soft clouds in the cold air. Her path didn't usually take her past the lake, but something that day had nudged her toward the quiet trail. She walked with her thoughts until a distant sound caught her attention, barking. At first, she thought little of it. Dogs bark all the time, at squirrels, at geese, sometimes just for fun. But something about this bark was different. It wasn't rhythmic or playful. It was sharp, frantic, relentless. It sounded like a siren in disguise. Rachel stopped. She listened. The bark continued, fast, high-pitched, desperate. Her instincts flared. She turned her eyes toward the lake and saw something that made her chest tighten, a golden dog flat against the ice near a jagged hole in the center of the frozen lake. A broken patch, water around it, and no human in sight. Her heart dropped. Training took over. She broke into a sprint. Rachel's boots skidded to a halt near the tree line, her eyes locked on the scene unfolding across the ice. She didn't waste a second. Her hands fumbled for her phone as she called emergency services, quickly relaying the situation and coordinates with practiced urgency. As the dispatcher spoke, Rachel's eyes scanned the area, then she spotted a long, fallen branch nearby. She dropped the phone, snatched the branch, and began crawling onto the ice, staying low to distribute her weight. Each movement was measured, careful. The ice groaned beneath her, but she didn't stop. Max stayed completely still, his eyes never leaving the hole. He growled low, not at her, but at the cold void beneath him, as if daring it to let go of his boy. Rachel reached him and extended the branch into the black water. Her hands trembled. Seconds felt like hours. Then contact. Fingers brushed the branch. She reached in deeper and felt Liam's arm. Without hesitation, she grabbed tight and pulled, summoning every ounce of strength. The surface cracked wider, soaking her to the elbows, but she didn't stop. Slowly, inch by inch, Liam emerged, blue, lifeless, but still there. Liam's body was ice-cold and terrifyingly still as Rachel laid him flat on the cracking surface. His lips were blue, his skin pale, and his chest didn't rise. For a moment, fear threatened to freeze her more than the cold ever could. But she shook it off. With trained urgency, she tilted his head back and began CPR, counting compressions aloud, her breath visible in the freezing air. "Come on, kid," she whispered between breaths. "Stay with me." Beside her, Max whined incessantly, his fur soaked, tail tucked, but he didn't leave Liam's side. He licked Liam's face, nudging him gently with his nose, as if trying to will his friend back. The scene was surreal, a stranger fighting for life and a dog refusing to say goodbye. Minutes later, sirens pierced the silence. Paramedics rushed across the lake, stunned at what they found, a woman soaked and shivering, performing CPR, and a golden retriever pressed against a lifeless boy, refusing to move an inch. It was clear neither of them was giving up. At the hospital, Liam was rushed into intensive care, his tiny frame wrapped in thermal blankets, warm fluids flowing through IVs, and machines monitoring every heartbeat. The diagnosis was severe hypothermia, his core body temperature had dropped dangerously low. Doctors worked quickly, knowing time was still critical. One nurse whispered, "He is lucky, really lucky." But the senior physician shook his head gently. "No," he said. "He's got that dog to thank." They all knew if Liam had stayed in the icy water even a few minutes longer, he likely wouldn't have survived. It was Max's relentless barking, his decision to lie on the fragile ice and mark the exact spot that had made the impossible rescue possible. Word of the dramatic rescue spread fast. Local news aired the story, and within a day, Max's face was on every screen, the brave golden retriever who defied the ice to save his boy. He wasn't just a pet anymore. Max was a hero. Weeks later, the snow had begun to melt, and life slowly returned to normal, but nothing would ever be quite the same again. When Liam finally came home, weaker but smiling, the first thing he did was drop to his knees in the front yard where Max was waiting. The golden retriever bounded toward him, tail wagging wildly, eyes full of love and recognition. Liam wrapped his arms around Max's neck and held on tightly, burying his face in his fur. Tears streamed down his cheeks. "You saved me," he whispered, his voice cracking. Max licked his face, whimpering softly, as if saying, "I never left." From that moment on, Max wasn't seen as just a dog, he was Liam's brother, his guardian, his miracle. The story of their bond spread throughout the town, touching hearts far and wide. And at the edge of Greystone Lake, a wooden sign now stands proudly. In honor of Max, who barked, braved, and believed.